Pam's the kind of individual who's going to make sure that justice is done the way it's supposed to be, equal treatment under the law, not this political approach to the law that we've seen, not this lawfare that we've seen, not this Jack Smith, Fonnie Willis, Alvin Bragg, ridiculous stuff that we have witnessed, and a Justice Department that won't be saying, oh, moms and dads at school board meetings need to be investigated. Oh, an FBI that said if you're a pro-life Catholic, you're an extremist. And maybe it'll be a Justice Department that can tell us who planted the pipe bombs on January 6th, who leaked the Dobbs opinion, and who put cocaine at the White House, for goodness sake. Maybe give us some answer to those questions.
All right, guys, happy Wednesday to you. We're headed towards the weekend. Never a slow day in Washington, though. We're into the holiday season, but I'm telling you, it's a busy day every day here in Washington. The nominees that President Trump has put forward are all throughout the Senate, meeting with different senators. We'll talk about a little of that today. Jim Jordan, incoming chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, is going to join us. Bill Gertz from the Washington Times is going to talk to us about what's going on with China. Are we ready for war? Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. And by the way, check this out.
Those who are here committing crimes, robberies, shooting at police officers, raping innocent people, have been a harm to our country. I want to sit down and hear the plan on how we're going to address them. Those are the people I am talking about, and I would love to sit down with the Board of Czar and hear his thoughts on how we're going to address those who are harming our citizens.
You're going to see more mayors like this. Eric Adams, the embattled mayor of New York, basically goes out and says, yep, I'm going to work with Tom Homan. I'm going to stop this sanctuary city that I created. And because the immigrants have overtaken us, they're costing us money, they're committing crimes, etc. Suddenly, the guy who was a huge fan of sanctuary cities is a huge fan of wanting to meet with Tom Homan. And by the way, Tom Homan went out and said, great, I'll love to meet with you. It's unbelievable. So unreal what's going on here. Trump is in New York tonight getting the Fox Patriot Award. And then he's headed off to France for the weekend to see the redone Notre Dame. Not bad. Not a bad little weekend for President Trump. All right. Lot to break down. Before I do that, if you are the person who runs your company or is in charge of finances, I want to introduce you to a game changer in your world. This is a Ramp card. It says Visa on the back. It's like a Visa card, right? But it's from the company Ramp. It's an expensive card. It tracks your finances, and it is a game changer when it comes to running your business. It streamlines things. It creates efficiencies. You don't have to keep a bunch of receipts anymore. It's easy to use. You can get virtual and physical cards and start making payments in less than 15 minutes. This thing, I'm telling you, I've talked to a buddy of mine that we had on the show. He said, Sean, I went and got Ramp, and you're not going to believe how much time this is saving me. You and your employees don't have to chase down receipts anymore or spend hours doing expense reports. It automates everything. I mean, it makes your life so bad. But here's the kicker, and it's Christmas season, folks. So if you're looking to get a little extra in your stocking, you get $250 right now if you join Ramp. Just go to ramp.com/Spicer, ramp.com/Spicer, and you can get $250 for checking out Ramp. Now, that is the best deal you're going to get in the holiday season. Forget Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Ramp.com/Spicer. Sign up and get $250 cash. Man, that's a deal. Remember, cards are issued by Sutton and Celtic Bank. Members FDIC. Terms and conditions apply. All right. So much to get to. By the way, a very unfortunate incident in New York City this morning. The United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, was shot and killed in Manhattan, right in front of the hotel where we held Trump's 2016 election night party. It was unbelievable. There's an ongoing investigation, but this just tells you what's happening. And by the way, the Chicago mayor,
Trump, Tom Homan, make an example out this right here first. Please come here first, because you know what? We're going to help you. We want to forensic.
Ma'am, I would ask that you keep your, hold on a second, stop her time.
Our mayor is embarrassing us, y'all, around the world. And you all took the power back from him to say the city of Chicago is out of the business of funding illegals. We are out of the business of prioritizing non-American citizens on top of the American citizens who go out in this cold weather every day to make money to pay their taxes.
I mentioned what Eric Adams is doing. He got destroyed by Chicagoans' calls for Trump and Homan to come to Chicago by his constituents. The people in Chicago are telling the mayor, stop it with the woke leftist progressive agenda that you're putting forward. Start working with Trump. Start taking back our city. Stop it with the illegals coming in here. I mean, I'm telling you, folks, the Trump administration is going to get a huge help coming forward because the Democratic mayors of so many cities, I think, are going to realize that it's smarter to be on board with what Trump's doing than fight the system, because the American people have realized how much trouble, how many drugs, how much human trafficking is coming in because of this. One last thing before we get to our discussion with Congressman Jim Jordan, the incoming thing. We have a great week lined up for you. Megyn Kelly is on Friday. Next week, Tom Homan, Seb Gorka, Bill O'Reilly. It's going to be amazing, and it's going to keep coming. By the way, Friday, if you really want to understand what these changes could be to the White House press office, I'm dedicating Friday's newsletter to explaining to you who does what and how things can happen and how the processes work. So if you're really interested, because they keep talking about changes to the White House briefing room, I'm going to break it all down for you. Go to SeanSpicer.com, sign up now, and I'll explain how all of this happened. Okay, before I bring in Jim Jordan, I want to tell you, obviously, I've struggled my whole life with weight loss, and I've tried every plan in the world. I mean, I've done them all. Every fad diet you can name. I've tried it. Some have been successful, none last. And when I got introduced to the folks at My PhD Weight Loss, I talked to them about what I had dealt with in the past, where I fall short sometimes. And they sat down with me and said, okay, let's put a plan together that's realistic, that's a change in your lifestyle, that's not a fad, that'll start producing real results incrementally, moving in the right direction for good, so that you'll lose the weight, and then we'll put a plan together that will manage keeping it off. And it's been amazing because I sat down one-on-one with my nutritionist. We meet every week. We do a weigh-in. I talked to, I mean, look, the holidays weren't great. But boom, they're back on track now. Okay, and here's what you can do between now and Christmas to stay afloat. They give you some free starter food that's amazing. It's at no extra cost. And like I said, you've got these weekly accountability check-ins where they talk about what's working, what's not. They ensure accountability. So give them a call if you're struggling with weight. 1-864-644-1900, or go to myphdweightloss.com, myphdweightloss.com. All right, without further ado, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee in the House of Representatives, the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Jim Jordan. Congressman Jordan, good to see you.
Good to be with you, Sean.
You know, I was thinking this is the last time I'm going to call you Congressman, because you're Chairman Jordan in a couple weeks. You got to be excited about what all of this means for you and the agenda.
Yeah, I mean, this is a chance to do what we told the American people we were going to do: secure the border, get back to common sense energy policy, make sure the tax cuts that were so good that President Trump did back when you were in the White House, make sure those get reauthorized and some other tax cuts take place, and get about fixing the country and getting our economy moving and helping the families across this great land. So, yeah, it's a pretty exciting time.
So I know the Senate obviously deals with nominations, but you'll be the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. What do you think about the Donald Trump's pick in Pam Bondi to lead the Department of Justice?
I think it's great. I mean, Pam's the kind of individual who's going to make sure that justice is done the way it's supposed to be: equal treatment under the law, not this political approach to the law that we've seen, not this lawfare that we've seen, not this Jack Smith, Fonnie Willis, Alvin Bragg, ridiculous stuff that we have witnessed, and a Justice Department that won't be saying, oh, moms and dads at school board meetings need to be investigated. Oh, an FBI that said if you're a pro-life Catholic, you're an extremist. And maybe it'll be a Justice Department that can tell us who planted the pipe bombs on January 6th, who leaked the Dobbs opinion, and who put cocaine at the White House, for goodness sake. Maybe give us some answer to those questions. So she's the kind of individual you want leading this organization, this agency, where they're focused on serving the people, not targeting we the people.
You know, when President Trump nominated Kash Patel to lead the FBI, at first I was like, I've known Kash a long time, and I was like, this is going to be interesting to see what the reaction is in Washington. And I got to tell you, if I had a scale of 1 to 10 on who gets nominated on Kash, I'm going to give him a 9.5. Yeah. Obviously, I always give myself a little room for error, but I've been shocked at the number of people who I assumed would be anti-Kash that are excited about shaking up. And like, I'm talking about establishment folks, Congressman, that said to me, you know what, the FBI does need to be shaken up, and Kash Patel's time to. And it, like the kind of people that you and I both know that you're like, okay, wow, I'm surprised, but he has really garnered some serious support. And I think that goes to both Kash, but it also goes to the state of the FBI.
No, well said. All well said. And I always go back to this. Remember, it was Kash Patel working for then Chairman Nunes who said it was the Clinton campaign who hired the law firm Perkins Coie, who hired Fusion GPS, who hired a foreigner, Christopher Steele, who put lies together in a dossier that was taken to the secret court, the FISA court, to get the permission to go spy on President Trump's campaign. And they lied to the court when they got that permission, that warrant to do that. I mean, it's like Kash Patel was at the center of all that, figuring it out and letting we, the people, the American people, understand what was going on. God bless him for doing that. That in and of itself is the reason we need him as running the FBI, because he was willing to show how bad it had gotten under Comey and what they were doing to a Republican candidate for president of the United States, and then all the other stuff that happened. So yeah, I'm glad he selected him too. He's the kind of guy who's going to get in there like Pam Bondi and going to shake things up and get things back on the right track.
We're talking positively about two of the nominees. There's another gentleman by the name of Chad Chronister, the Hillsborough, Florida sheriff, that withdrew his name. I found it fascinating, though. Why? Because there was, I think, widespread concern from a lot of MAGA world that his actions during COVID, going after a preacher for holding services, etc. What I find fascinating about it is it's normally you're worried about the left shooting your people down, but it was the MAGA world that said, I'm sorry, this guy is antithetical to what we have been fighting for in this America First agenda.
Yeah.
And he withdrew his name. I'm excited about it because, like I said, I think the America First MAGA team is like, hey, we fought long and hard to get where we are now, and we're not going to let people who aren't committed to the agenda. Well,
this past 2 years, this is where we spent the bulk of our time on the Judiciary Committee is showing how Americans' liberties were attacked. The whole censorship issue, every First Amendment liberty we have was assaulted by the Biden-Harris administration during COVID. So I think that's where this comes from. This stems from this idea that, we saw what they did, whether it was the mayor of New York, the governor of New York, and the things they did there. Mayor Garcetti in Los Angeles said, establish a snitch line like Tim Walz did in Minnesota. Report your neighbor if they're outside walking their dog and they don't have a mask on, for goodness. It was ridiculous. So, yeah, I think people were rightly concerned, particularly now when you look back, Sean, and you figure out, and we understand now that everything Fauci told us, unelected Dr. Fauci told us, was not accurate, right? He said it didn't come from a lab. He said it wasn't gain-of-function research done at the lab. He said it wasn't our tax money used at the lab. He said the vaccinated can't get it, the vaccinated can't transmit the virus. Those were all false. He said 6 feet was social distancing was based on science. He said masks worked. And he told us this was the first virus in history that there was no such thing as natural immunity. Like there's like 8 lies. He was 0 for 8. And yet you had people like restricting people's liberties based on all those lies. And we look back on it all and we say, no, we're done with all that. We don't want that. We want to protect the First Amendment, protect our rights. And I think that was why you saw the pushback that you did and why this sheriff stepped down.
So the thing that about what you said that I find interesting is that for so long we've been told to trust institutions, doctors, government, you name it. Just trust them. They've got your best interests at heart. And I kind of view that with a lot of healthcare, right? So your doctor tells you to do something. The FDA recommends something. The CDC approves something. And I go, okay, because these are the people, this is what they do. And I would say over the last 8 to 12 months, through a lot of people's work, some of the stuff that you're doing in Congress, there's a lot more questions now that need to get asked and answered. Why are there these conflicts at the FDA? I didn't realize that half the people approving drugs were also getting paid to do the research on them or have enormous conflicts. I think that there's just so much that we are now as the American people being shown these conflicts that, or, I ask doctors now, how much nutrition training have you ever gotten? Well, none. And now you're going to tell me that, you start to realize why the flaws are. So I say all that as a wind up to ask you, as you take the chairmanship of the Judiciary committees, what are your priorities? What do you want to uncover? What do you want to investigate? What do you want to have hearings on?
We want to continue to focus on this effort to limit Americans' First Amendment liberty, this censorship effort. Remember, we got Mark Zuckerberg to write us a letter saying, Biden administration pressured us to censor. We in fact censored. We also censored the Hunter Biden laptop story and the Zuckerberg. We got him to do that. We got this organization GARM's no longer in operation because of the work we did on the committee. So we want to continue the work there, and of course we're going to work on the border issue because that jurisdiction is in the Judiciary Committee, immigration law. But I'm really focused on First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights, Fourth Amendment. This is why it's so important that Tulsi Gabbard get confirmed, because Tulsi is 100% with us on FISA. This is why it's so important Kash Patel get confirmed, because he understands you've got to reform FISA. That comes up for reauthorization in a year and a half. So we need people in the administration who get where we need to go to protect our Fourth Amendment rights, our First Amendment rights. And frankly, to your point, this is why it's important RFK Jr. gets confirmed, because he's willing to push back on the experts like Fauci, who told us all this stuff that turned out not to be true. That's why this is all important. But we're going to continue to focus on this idea of the attacks from government working with big tech, big media to limit and censor us, all in the name of disinformation, when in fact they're the ones providing the disinformation. So we think that's real important.
There's a story that was in the Wall Street Journal a couple of days ago about these corporate CEOs that are scrubbing their websites of DEI, trying to get on Joe Rogan and emulate Donald Trump. There was a story that Mark Zuckerberg went down to Mar-a-Lago to kiss and suck up. I'm concerned that a lot of these corporations are trying to figure out, how do I survive for the next 4 years, right? I'm going to say the right things. I'm going to do the right things just to get by for the next 4 years, as opposed to be exposed. I mean, like Robbie Starbuck, some of these guys are doing amazing work, getting these guys to denounce their DEI and woke policies and get back to the business of, frankly, doing business. So I love the idea that you're continuing to hold them accountable, because I don't think that one meeting at Mar-a-Lago, sort of absolves Mark Zuckerberg for everything that he's done to censor issues, to spread Zuckbucks around the world, the country, to get his people elected. So I think making sure that these companies are continuing to be held accountable for the suppression of stories, for their actions on DEI policy is important, and that we don't back down just because we have a Republican president.
No, I agree. That's why we want to keep doing the work. Now, I do think some of these people maybe they've genuinely seen the light and they realize, wow, what was happening, this whole disinformation, misinformation, malinformation, all this baloney, and to push to censor. Maybe they figured out that's wrong, and there's a true embracement, of the First Amendment again. Let's hope so. But you may be right too, and there may be just, President Trump won. Let's get through the next 4 years. It could be a combination. I don't know. What I do know is we need to protect the First Amendment. I still remember back when COVID happened, there was a memorandum that came from the Justice Department from Bill Barr. And the memorandum said the Constitution is not suspended in a time of crisis. And I would say, actually, that's when it's most important. So we need to remember that. And hopefully there's a genuine change of heart with some of these folks. But we're going to continue to do the oversight that the Constitution requires us to do.
How many new friends do you have since November 5th that have called and said, oh, Congressman Jordan, I get so many people who call me, but I can't imagine being the incoming Judiciary Committee chair, who are like, I just wanted to get to know you some better. I mean, are companies reaching out saying that I'd just like 5 minutes with the chairman to talk about, our agenda and how we can work together? I have found it, and I'm at obviously just, have a show, right? You have a gavel. How many new friends do you have? Yeah,
it definitely happens. We're having meetings. I just came from a meeting. We got some other ones coming. So yeah, that happens. But I guess the real center of the universe, as you know, is down in Palm Beach. They're all going down there to talk to the guy who's going to be president of the United States in 40 some days. So that's the real center there, because people understand, and you can see the behavior, like whether it's foreign heads of state, like the Prime Minister of Canada coming down, what have you. People understand that there's a change coming, and it's a change that I think is going to be good for our country.
The Democrats are obviously worried about your agenda because they're fighting out who gets to sit next to you as the ranking member, the lead Democrat. So currently that's Jerry Nadler of New York. But now apparently Jamie Raskin of Maryland is going to challenge him. And the case that he's trying to make to his fellow Democrats is, let me leapfrog Nadler. He's been there forever, but the guy's old and he can't take on Jim Jordan. Do you care who sits next to you? I mean, is that something that because they're literally, that's how he's campaigning. He's campaigning.
I saw that. It's funny because I saw that same letter, and it's like we get mentioned in the letter along with MAGA. It's kind of interesting. I don't care if it's Jamie. I don't care if it's Jerry. To me, our focus is doing what we told the American people we were going to do, And as chairman of the Judiciary Committee, that's the committee that's supposed to be looking out for your liberties, your viewers' liberties, the American people's fundamental rights, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. That's what we're supposed to do. We're going to focus on that. I don't care who the ranking member is. We got a job to do, and that's what we're going to do.
You mentioned immigration. Is there anything that you want to look at in terms of immigration law to codify certain things? There's been discussion on the right over about birthright citizenship. What do you want legislatively to see happen in that realm?
Well, the first is President Trump's going to look at getting back to remain in Mexico. It'd be nice if we could actually get that in law, that people wait in the adjacent country while we evaluate their claims, so that we don't have to detain them. Or what the Biden administration did is just release them into the country and then say, show up in 4 years and we'll figure out if you get to stay or not. That we got to stop that. So that'd be good if we got that in the law. I think President Trump can do a lot of that, though. Executive order. There's some things we can do with the Flores decision. There's things we can do with this whole parole program, this Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Haiti, where the Biden administration is letting people fly in and bypass the normal process. That needs to stop. So we're looking at all those. We had a good bill, H.R. 2, that I think we should pass as soon as we start next Congress, pass again, send it to the Senate. Probably won't get passed there, but then you take what elements you can from that bill, you put them in the reconciliation package, and help firm up our immigration law and our border security.
You know, when I was down visiting the border a few weeks back in Cochise County, I asked the agents, what are the top things that you would tell the next administration they need to do to secure the border? Number one, they both said finish the wall. Number two, They said enforce the law. And I said to them, I don't know, what does that mean, enforce the law? And he said, Sean, when you cross the border the first time, it's a misdemeanor. The second time, it's a felony. He said, one guy I've picked up 29 times.
Yep.
He goes, we don't enforce the law. And that's where I think, your efforts to make sure that we're actually enforcing the law. It's against the law. It's a felony to come into this country twice, and yet they get let off. It's like we give them a free ride back to the border so they can continue to traffic drugs and humans.
And here's another one. 1.3 million people who've come to our country, migrants who come into the country, have already been in front of a judge, been through the process, and their asylum claim has been heard, and they've said, no, you don't qualify under the law. And they're still here. That's the Democrats are going to make a big deal of the deportation. President Trump's going to start, and Tom Homan, they're going to start with criminals, and then they're going to go to the 1.3 million who've already been in front of a judge, and the judge said, you don't qualify under our law. That's the people you deport. Once you start doing those things, finish the wall, remain in Mexico, deport the people who've already had their case heard in front of a judge, you will send a message, and you wait. That's when the border gets secure again, like it was 4 years ago under President Trump.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key thing, right? If people don't think that they can get rewarded for breaking our laws, they won't come.
Of course,
right?
Of course.
It's 101. If you can break the speed limit, if you know that a cop doesn't patrol the road, you'll break the speed limit. And we need to start doing that. But you mentioned the Judiciary Committee's priorities. Let's talk about what the Congresses are. Senator John Thune, the incoming majority leader, said the first bill, he has two bills that he wants to focus on. The first bill, a package focused on border, energy, national defense, would land on Trump's desk within the first 30 days under Thune's plan. The second, a sprawling tax package focused on extending the 2017 tax cuts that expire at the end of this year. Okay. The chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, your colleague Jason Smith, said, no. We have to put the tax bill first. That's got to be the priority. Where do you come down on what the priority should be and how the sequencing should go?
I'm not sure the sequencing. I'm not sure how you split it up. What I do know is I think all that needs to get done. And the key is when we're going to have basically a 2-seat majority for a bulk of this time period. We're at 219 to 215 when we start Congress because Mr. Gates is not taking office. He's not going to serve in the next Congress. And then we got Elise Stefanik and Michael Walz going in the administration. So it's going to be 217, 215 real quick. So you got two vote. You can't lose one vote.
Right.
So with that's the case, what does it take for us to make sure we get 217 votes to pass things and the Senate can pass things and we can use reconciliation? Do we have to have some taxes in with energy? Do we have to have taxes and energy and border security immigration law together to get everyone to vote for it? I don't know. What I would say is let's get it all done, and how tactically that plays out, I think it's going to be determined by what allows us to get the votes. I mean, we just got to deal with reality. But what we got to get done is what we told the American people we're going to get done, and that is all of those things. Common sense energy policy, secure the border, and cut taxes, and not just renew and reauthorize the tax cuts that were in place in the last Trump administration, but also the new things we've talked about. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime that President Trump talked about. And we're going to have to do something, I think, with the SALT issue, because we've got such a small majority. Some of our members from New York and California are going to want some element of that in the package. And you got to figure out how all that works together. That's the legislative process. It gets messy sometimes. So I'm not sure the tactics, but let's just get it all done.
Well, that's the just to remind people, that's the state and local tax deduction that you get for like having a house in blue states like Texas. California and New Jersey New York have a problem because they have high property taxes.
Right.
But the tactics matter, right? Because you mentioned this, you have a 2-seat majority. And so let's just say a Mike Lawler of New York who really wants that SALT deduction. He might say, if it's not in here, I can't vote for it. You might say, well, if we don't have key elements of HR 2, how does a guy like Mike Johnson keep everybody together? Because I get your point, right? You're going to do your job, and then the leadership has to do theirs. But if you're them, I got to imagine this is not going to be an easy feat, because one or two people torpedo the whole thing.
Exactly, and that's why you got to have lots of meetings, lots of conversations, and some of those are already starting. I know we got an important meeting coming up here in a couple hours on this very subject. A handful of us. That's just how it has to go. And that's part of the legislative process. But what we got to keep, I think, sort of as the main point, the old idea, keep the main point is the American people elected us to get this done. And we talked about all that: energy, border, tax pact. We talked about all that. So let's make sure we get it done.
All right. How much time should we spend going after someone like Hunter Biden? I had Alan Dershowitz on the show. He said, hey, look, by Joe Biden giving him a full pardon, he can't use his Fifth Amendment anymore, because you can't claim him. You can't claim that you're going to perjure or impugn yourself because it's been taken away. So should Congress call him in front, your committee and others, government reform?
Well, where I want to focus is certainly on the Judiciary Committee is David Weiss. We had David Weiss in for a deposition several months back, and he wouldn't answer really anything because he kept hiding behind ongoing investigation. Because remember, but for two brave whistleblowers from the IRS who came forward, they'd have got away with all this. We'd have never known any of this stuff. It'd have happened. He'd have had his sweetheart deal that he went to into the court in Delaware. And by the way, the judge was great too. So two whistleblowers and a judge in Delaware stopped the sweetheart deal from happening. And then David Weiss gets named special counsel. So we got to do our work on the Judiciary Committee, the typical work you do on oversight, to look at special counsels when they issue their report. So we're going to focus on that. And whether that involves, what that may involve with Hunter Biden, I think remains to be seen. But I want to focus on David Weiss, because there's all kinds of inconsistencies there that we need to uncover, and we need to get all that information. So that's where the Judiciary Committee will focus. Chairman Comer may look to do something more relative to specifically to Hunter Biden. We'll just have to wait and see.
So, but I got to imagine part of the concern, my theory anyway, is the reason he got a blanket pardon is because there's a lot more there. What are the connections to Jim Biden, potentially to the big guy? And that's where I think now there's a lot more. It's not just about Hunter Biden. Who cares about him? But what did he do in pursuit of Biden Inc. overall?
Right. Because, why else would you have a pardon that is for 10 years and 11 months, from January 1st, 2014 to December 1st, 2024? 3 of those years, 14, 15, 16, were while Joe Biden was vice president. Those were also the years, coincidentally, when Hunter Biden was getting all the money from Burisma. And Joe Biden, remember, took specific action with our tax money, American tax dollars, to pressure Ukraine to fire the prosecutor. Said, you're not getting the money until the prosecutor's fired, after Hunter Biden asked him to do such a thing. So that, I think, is why this is such a broad pardon and such a long period of time, because it deals with Burisma. And again, this is what we were looking into. I think it's interesting. Democrats said, the Republicans' impeachment inquiry is ridiculous. But then Joe Biden pardons him for the very things we were inquiring about, for goodness sake. So I think that is an interesting element, and something that I think we'll continue to look at. But I want to do it through the, looking at the special counsel, David Weiss.
All right. Congressman, soon to be chairman, Jim Jordan, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean. Take care.
All right, great conversation with Jim Jordan. A lot of insight there that I don't think you're going to see anywhere else. I want to bring in Bill Gertz. He's with the Washington Times. He's their national security columnist and correspondent. Some great insights on China and our military and what the Trump team is doing to get ready. Before I do that, though, I got to tell you about this. I had 11 people at my house, 11, for Thanksgiving. And not just Thanksgiving. It was like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, everyone left. And every morning we brewed a big cup of coffee. And I started getting asked, first day, what's this coffee? And I go, it's Wired to Fish. Because everyone's like, this tastes great. Where's it from? Is this Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts? Because, I'm a New England guy. So they all ask. I said, no, Wired to Fish. you could, I didn't give them the full sell, but I was like, yeah, because the beans are Arabica beans from Mexico and Guatemala. And 25% of the proceeds go back to causes that I like. Clean water initiatives, faith-based initiatives. You don't feel like you're supporting causes that aren't true to your values. I love Wired to Fish. Literally every day we brewed it, not just one. We went through a whole bag in 3 days because we kept getting asked, can you brew another pot? Can you brew another pot? It's that good, my friends. So I think if you are going to have people over, or if you just like a good cup of coffee for the holidays, go to wired2fishcoffee.com. It's the numeral 2, right? Wired2coffeefish.com and enter code WeCare for 15% off. Trust me, get ahead of Christmas. If you're going to have people over, if you just know that you're going to want to stay up or like coffee, get ahead of it now so that you can order it and it arrives in time. Wired2fish.com. Use code WeCare for 15% off. All right, I'm going to bring in Bill Gertz. He is the national security correspondent for the Washington Times. You can follow him at GertzFile, GERTZ file.com, and we'll put those links in the show bio. So without further ado, Bill. Bill, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here. Glad to be on the show.
All right, I got a lot I want to break down with you because you've got so much insight into what's happening, but I want to start with these reports where the U.S. government is very concerned and is telling telecom companies, you better tighten up your networks because the Chinese are going in, gathering up people's data, potentially having access to their text messages, etc. Tell us what you know about how serious this threat is.
Yeah, this is a program run by the Chinese Ministry of State Security, the Civilian Intelligence Service. It's been codenamed Salt Typhoon, and it's done a massive job of breaking into key strategic U.S. networks. And by doing that, they've been able to actually gain access to law enforcement level information. It's actually quite a counterintelligence disaster because a lot of these law enforcement requests are court orders for surveillance of suspected Chinese spies and other spies. Which means that the Chinese intelligence service, which has already wreaked havoc on the CIA going back to 2010 when they rolled up all of the CIA's recruited agents in China, now they've been able to identify the people that U.S. intelligence thinks are working for the Chinese government. And they can either exploit those connections or feed disinformation to the U.S. government.
So I get this from a lot of people. I tell everyone I know, stay off TikTok, watch what you do, tighten up your security. The Chinese are trying to listen in. And a lot of people say, oh my God, Sean, I don't really care. I'm a boring person. How do you, to me, I go, you don't get it though, do you? Like they start popping stuff into your feeds or taking information out. Like you can suddenly become very susceptible to compromise or to issues that they're looking for stuff. When you get asked that question, because I'm sure you do based on what you cover for the Washington Times, what do you tell people who say, Bill, why do I really care what the Chinese see? I'm an open book. I'm boring.
Well, it's really a security threat from the standpoint of the use of artificial intelligence. What the Chinese Communist Party has been doing is been gathering massive amounts of data on Americans. They're building databases which can be used. See, artificial intelligence involves massive data as well as high-speed advanced computing. And they can use that information to target people for information. Say if you're working for a key technology company in Silicon Valley out here where I am pretty close to right now, they could use that to target the people that have access to those networks. Same with the military. They could target a military computer network operator and gain access through that person's credentials. It's all a very sophisticated operation, and it does pose a major national security threat for the United States.
So what do you tell people? I know some people that I know are only using Signal now. They're like, I'm not going to talk on an open line. Do you think that's a bridge too far or too extreme, or is that warranted?
Oh, it's definitely warranted. The best security measures you can take, the better. And Signal's one of those that a lot of people use. Let's put it this way. Anything that's electronic, the Chinese can gain access to it. Whether they can decrypt it is another story. That's an open question, but clearly the Chinese electronic intelligence gathering system has increased in leaps and bounds over the last decade or so, probably on par now with the National Security Agency, our premier electronic spying agency.
So there's rumors that they've hacked like people like Kash, Patel and others. How concerning is that? I mean, and it's not just a security issue, but let's say I send you an email that's a stupid joke or a meme, and they could grab that and use it against me and say, hey, we're going to expose the fact that you said it's something inappropriate or told a bad joke. If you're someone like Kash Patel or another Trump nominee, how concerned should you be about what you've put in text or email?
Very concerned. Yeah, there's ways to use that information. Basically, they could take concerning text messages or emails and use that, leak them to a friendly news outlet or online outlet and use it to discredit or undermine the ability of those people to do their jobs or to get the post in the first place if it's a nominee that has to go through Senate confirmation.
One of the things that has continued to concern me is our rising debt. And because that puts us in a weaker position to spend money, the interest on the payments reduce the ability to spend domestically. And it also, in my opinion, makes the Chinese hand stronger. How concerned should lawmakers be in understanding the impact that our debt has vis-a-vis our ability to take on China?
Well, I think the estimates are that it's now $35 trillion of our national debt, and it's obviously a financial problem. People for successive administrations have been spending like drunken sailors, and you can keep printing money, but of course we're dealing with a high inflation right now, high gas prices, food prices all over the place. I still think that the U.S. economy is much stronger than the Chinese economy. They're number two, we're number one, but they're making progress. They have a lot of problems in China now economically, but they also have total control or even totalitarian control over that system. So I think that we're certainly vulnerable as a result of our debt, but I think that it's manageable. Clearly, this idea of getting Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy to look at streamlining government efficiency, it's urgently needed. I can tell you that in the defense and intelligence communities, the money problems there are huge, misspending money and not properly handling the best finances for the American people.
So there's a lot of concern about our preparedness, our readiness to take on China. They're talking about fairly openly talking about being confrontational by 2027. Do you think, in your opinion, that the military today, the U.S. military, is in a position to effectively take on China?
I recently was in Hawaii and I interviewed Admiral Sam Paparo, the commander of the Indo-Pacific Command. He's fairly confident that they're in a good deterrence posture. He used the Latin phrase, if you want peace, prepare for war. He's been preparing for war. We talked about recent large-scale Chinese military exercises around Taiwan, the hottest flashpoint in the Indo-Pacific right now. And I said, they've been doing a lot of exercises preparing for an attack on Taiwan. And he said, so have I. In other words, he's preparing to defend them. The U.S. policy towards whether we'll defend Taiwan is ambiguous, strategic ambiguity. But Paparo said very recently that there's a very, very high probability that the U.S. will defend Taiwan because the implications of losing Taiwan, not to mention the semiconductor fabrication plants there and the impact on our other alliances with Japan and South Korea and the Philippines, would be a disaster.
So, but that gets to, that's obviously Admiral Paparo talking about what Indo-PACOM, whether or not the 7th Fleet is ready. I get that. But overall, is the state of our military readiness? There's a lot of talk about Trump wanting to get rid of the DEI and woke policies because they don't think that the focus is on readiness and preparedness. Is that beyond Indo-PACOM? Do you think that the military writ large is trained and equipped today to take on the challenges of a China tomorrow?
Yeah, the military in the Indo-Pacific is postured basically to be ready to take on the Chinese military. I recently was in Hawaii and spoke with a number of defense officials there, and they talked about how difficult it is for the People's Liberation Army, the Chinese Communist Party's military, to conduct a cross-strait invasion. It's very difficult. They're not ready to do that, according to these officials, but they're definitely working on it. So within a matter of a few years, I think they still have time before the 2027 deadline to be ready to conduct a major amphibious assault. The Indo-PACOM response has been identified by Admiral Paparo, the commander there, as a hellscape scenario. That is, they're going to employ large numbers, thousands of drones, both aerial drones and undersea drones, to be able to thwart the initial steps of any kind of an invasion. Basically, it's a measure to buy time for the U.S. military to gather its forces and move the long distances across the Pacific to be able to defend Taiwan.
So how much of this changes, if any, because Donald Trump's been elected president?
The Trump administration will probably continue the same policies of confronting China. I hope that they have an understanding that the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East are terrible things that are going on, but they are distracting the U.S. and taking weapons and munitions from the Pacific theater. Again, China is definitely clapping its hands in support of these the U.S. involvement in those, because it is distracting us from their efforts. Basically, and I've written this in my book, Deceiving the Sky. China is going to take over the world unless the U.S. stops them. And the main impediment to China taking over the world and imposing its brand of Marxism-Leninism with Chinese characteristics is the United States. So really, the front line in the strategic battle is with China. And we're seeing now a new entente, an informal alliance forming between China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. And that's certainly very troubling. And it has a lot of strategic implications for the Trump administration. Trump has... people have criticized Trump because he said Taiwan needs to do more for its defense, but he's also said he would bomb Beijing if China invaded Taiwan. He's also said that the Chinese are afraid to do anything under his administration because they think he's crazy and will act in irrational ways.
But that would lead me to believe that they are a little worried about doing something on his watch.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
On the other hand, the president, I'm not sure, incoming President Trump, I'm not sure he has a full understanding of the ideological dimensions of Chinese communism. Even some of the conservative China hands are unconvinced that China is actually a communist power and motivated by communism. And this is clearly a mistake. They are motivated by that. Xi Jinping is a hardline Marxist-Leninist, and he's restoring Marxism-Leninism after decades of what Deng Xiaoping, a previous leader, said was biding our time and hiding our capabilities. They're no longer in that mode. They're reverting back to Maoist-style communism.
This is the issue, though, Bill. I don't think our leaders view China as the threat that it is. I mean, you just framed it perfectly. They seek world domination. We stand in their way. And yet, too many times when I bring this up with folks, they make excuses about, well, their economy's still a little soft and da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. And I'm like, that doesn't change their motivations. I mean, a person who's crazy can still harm you. And it doesn't take anything away from, I mean, like the harm that they can cause you isn't any less because they were crazy or nuts versus completely sane. And so if the Chinese come after us, whether or not they're motivated by the right reasons, whether or not they're whatever, bottom line is they can inflict harm on us economically and militarily. And I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think that our leaders fully grasp that.
Yeah, they don't. I think the important thing to understand, and certainly the Biden administration didn't. In fact, early on in the Biden administration, the Chinese gave the Deputy Secretary of State, Wendy Sherman, a list of demands. And at the top of the list was a promise not to undermine the communist system in China. And the administration basically bought off on that. They're trying to pretend that they can do both competition and cooperation. There's been no cooperation with China. They're basically in Cold War mode towards the United States. And the Biden administration has tried to cooperate on climate change, on North Korea, and on other issues, and it's been an utter failure for their China policy. They have bolstered some defenses in Taiwan, although in my Washington Times column coming out very, very soon, I talk about how arms sales to Taiwan have declined under the Biden administration. During the first Trump administration, there were $15 billion in arms sales, including new F-16 jets. Arms sales during the one term of the Biden administration have been, I think, about $5 billion. So there really is a need to bolster the defense there as a deterrent measure against China.
Yeah. Bill Gertz, Washington Times. You can follow Bill at gertzfile.com. We'll put that link in the show notes as well. Bill, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean.
Guys, thanks for being with us. Great show today. Tomorrow, we've got an amazing panel coming your way. Then Friday, Megyn Kelly. Next week, Tom Homan, the border czar, Bill O'Reilly, Seb Gorka, and more. It's going to be amazing. Friday, I've got that great newsletter coming out. So sign up at SeanSpicer.com. It's all free. And we will see you back here tomorrow at 6. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.